He's Matt Miller, NFL draft analyst for ESPN. Matt, appreciate you coming on Foxboro Rush, my man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Great to be back with you guys, and it's going to be a fun offseason for the Patriots. You have all the money in the world. Every dollar in the world belongs to the New England Patriots. It's going to be a great offseason for you guys.
At a top four pick, the possibilities are endless. But a lot that has to do with the top four pick, Matt, of course, is how the top three shakes out. From what you know, from the info you've gathered, from all the scouting you do, how do you see the top three picks in this upcoming draft going down? Of course, right now, before the NFL Combine happens.
I was going to say, if you ask me in a week, I think I'll have different information than I have right now. But this is the most unpredictable top three I can remember in a long time. Last year, it was easy. The year before that, pretty easy. We knew it was going to be quarterback driven. This year, I think it's different. If you had to ask me today to do a mock draft and I can't change it, I would say Abdul Carter, Penn State goes 1. Travis Hunter, Colorado goes 2. Cam Ward, quarterback Miami, goes 3. Now, could the Titans trade that first pick? Absolutely. Could Cleveland decide they want to draft a quarterback? Absolutely. So it's very much like so much is up in the air right now. We got to see where guys like Sam Darnold land in free agency. We got to see what happens with Kirk Cousins and Daniel Jones and Justin Fields. So this is, I think, one of the more intriguing years where we just really don't know. Like Abdul Carter's probably going to go in the top 3. Travis Hunter's probably going to go in the top 3. Outside of that, it is very much up in the air right now.
Well, that is disheartening for me, my friend, because, I want Carter, I want Hunter. You're telling me both of them are gone? You said this is the most unpredictable top 3 in recent memory for you. How about we give you Mission Impossible? Can you predict? Pick 4, because I want to know what the Patriots are going to do in sort of your latest mock, Matt, that we're talking about here. Who do you have? If Hunter and Carter are gone, who do you sort of like for the Patriots right now, realistically, to take it for?
I think you have 2 choices. Will Campbell, the offensive lineman from LSU, or Mason Graham, defensive tackle from Michigan. Both really good players. And they're not the type of players that you guys are going to throw a parade in Boston when they're drafted, but they're just solid football players. And I think that fits really well with what Vrabel is about. It's what he did in Tennessee. So this is like Jeffrey Simmons or Peter Skoronski. It's those types of draft picks which the Titans had, where it's just, you know what, maybe there's not this super, traits, flashy, productive guy on the board, but there's just a really good football player. I can remember when I got started in this business and I'm trying to learn as much as I can about scouting. I had a general manager at the time tell me, sometimes with that first round pick, you just need someone who's going to be good for 10 years. Maybe they're not going to be a Hall of Famer. Maybe they're not going to be an All-Pro, but you need someone where you can look back and say, hey, our first draft pick here, he's still on the team. He's still a starter. Mason Graham would be that. Will Campbell would be that. And they happen to come at positions of value and positions of need for the Patriots. So, hey, I'm with you. Travis Hunter with Mike Vrabel and Drake May and Christian Gonzalez, that'd be so much fun. And Abdul Carter's the best player in the draft. So if you get Abdul Carter at 4, maybe we do throw that parade. I'll come up for it. We could have a good time. But as it looks right now, 4 is kind of the point where you're still getting a blue chip player, but there is a little bit of a drop off.
Yeah, man. Matt, we've had beers at dive bars in Joplin. If they take Travis Hunter at 4, you're coming up to Boston. You, me, and Trav are going to Warren Tavern. We're going to have a lot of main lunches, and we're going to love a dynamic guy like that on the outside. Hey, man, if you were drafting at 4, Matt, for you, what is the move you make, though? Because there's a possibility of the trade back, especially if Shedeur Sanders is still on the board.
Yeah. So if I were the Patriots, and they can hire me to consult on this if they need to, I would tell everyone next week, like when we get to Indy and everybody's going to Prime and everyone's going to St. Elmo's, I'm telling every journalist in the NFL, somebody's going to trade up for a quarterback. Or I would even be saying, hey, you know what? I heard the Titans and the Browns might take a quarterback. If you're the Patriots, you want to manufacture as much interest in Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders as humanly possible. Because what you really want is the Las Vegas Raiders to trade ahead of you to get a quarterback. Because then you're probably guaranteed that a quarterback goes at 2 maybe, and a quarterback goes at 3, or a quarterback goes at 1, a quarterback goes at 3. I would say right now, the chance of one quarterback going is like 100%. What you want if you're the Patriots is 2 quarterbacks going in the top 3, because then we're all math majors, right? You're either getting Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. So if you're the Patriots, tell everyone who will listen, Yeah, I heard the Browns are going to draft Shador Sanders at 2. Or I heard that, it's like that's what you want is someone moving up ahead of you to take one of these quarterbacks.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Matt, but I got to ask you this. It does seem as though Cam Ward's getting all the love and Shador's sort of, now consensus feels like the second quarterback off the board, wherever that will be. I thought for sure it would be more of a debate. And I thought for sure that Shador would be getting more love than he is. Can you just talk to me from a prospect perspective? Like, why is Shador not getting the love and Cam Ward is? Like, as you evaluate these quarterbacks, do you see it closer than it is? Because I do, and it just seems like a foregone conclusion now that Cam Ward's the guy.
I have about a 10-spot difference in my rankings. Cam Ward's at 14, Shador's at 24, so I have a gap. And it really comes down to this. I don't think folks yet realize that Shador is not this big, strong, fast guy. He's 6'1", 198 pounds. He didn't get his dad's speed. He would probably run in the 4.7s to 4.8s. I don't think we'll ever see a 40-yard time for him. I'd be shocked if we did. So he's not this hulking presence at quarterback. You see him stand next to other quarterbacks. I just saw him about a month ago at East-West Shrine Game, and it's like, oh, wow, he's really not that big. And so I think with Cam Ward, Travis goes to, he's 6'2", 225. So, he's 25 pounds bigger. He's faster. He has a stronger arm. He can throw from so many different arm angles. He's played one more year of college football. So I do think it comes down to preference. If I were a team running a play action offense and we had a good running back, I would rather have Shador Sanders because dude is surgical as a thrower and he's incredibly tough and he's proven that he can find his spots and he can get the ball there. What he doesn't give you is some of that dynamic ability that Cam Ward gives you. The flip side to that is sometimes Cam Ward makes decisions while doing that you would love him to take back. And so I think each guy has some areas to their game they're going to have to iron out. For NFL teams, it's going to come down to what are we okay with trying to fix and what are we okay with in our scheme, which do we prefer? Do we prefer a pocket passer or somebody who is a little bit better once you get them outside the tackle box?
Do you buy the Jackson Dart hype? I know he did a lot of favors for himself at the Senior Bowl. Do you see him emerging as a QB3 or the challenge for QB2? Yes,
I do. And here's why. Because you hear so many people saying it that it's hard to ignore it. Now, based on film, I don't think the gap between Shador and Jackson Dart is huge based on film. Based on traits, there are things I like more about Jackson Dart. I think he throws a beautiful deep ball. He's a little bit bigger, but the scheme that he's played at Ole Miss has not prepared him for the NFL. He's going to need half a season at minimum, I would think, to just get acclimated to the NFL game. And so that's where my hang up comes. If you're the Raiders or the Jets and you're going to draft Jackson Dart in the top 10, he's got to play pretty early because you just don't have those guys in place for him to learn behind. Maybe the Jets a little bit, with having some guys there, but that's where I get hung up is like, okay, if you're the Steelers and you draft Jackson Dart and you bring back Russell Wilson for a year, cool. I like that. I think that could work really well. Where I do struggle is if you're going to draft him and say, all right, week 1. And you'll remember that was my Drake May hang up too. It was like, gosh, he hasn't played a ton of football. If you put him out there week 1 on a bad team, he's going to learn some bad habits. The Patriots handled it perfectly. We had really, really good results to end the year. I think Jackson Dart, in terms of experience and what he's going to be able to do early on, it's similar. Like in a perfect world, he's going to sit for at least 8 games.
All right, Matt Miller. Yeah, I got him right here. Okay, Robert Kraft just called me. He said, write you a blank check, bring you in as a consultant for the draft. Patriots.
Yeah, I'm in.
You offered your services.
Yeah.
Patriots are on the clock. 4th overall. Will Campbell's on the board. Mason Graham's on the board. 2 guys you said make sense here. Who are we taking, or are we trading back and acquiring more picks? What's the move here, Matt Miller?
I would trade back. I think this is a draft where there's those couple really good players at the top, Carter and Hunter. I think there is a drop-off after that. So if they're both off the board, the difference between Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks from Texas isn't that big. The difference from, like Mason Graham's kind of in a category by himself, but this is such a strong defensive line class that like Walter Nolan from Ole Miss probably has a higher ceiling even than Mason Graham. He's not as pro ready. So if you can slide back, you wouldn't want to go super far, but if you can slide back to 7, 8, Even if the Bears wanted to come up from 10, I would probably entertain that, just because this is a roster that they're going to fill a lot of needs in free agency. We know that because of how much money they have. But this is a roster that I think just add as many good football players as you can this year. I look at Houston, I look at Washington, of teams that did a really good job of, let's not reach for need. We're just going to draft best player available, and we're going to turn this thing around pretty quickly. The Patriots could do that with $126 million in cap space and a lot of draft capital and a proven head coach. You could flip this thing around pretty quickly.
Hey, I love hearing that. More draft picks, more holes to fill, more cost control contracts around Drake May. And this is where it gets interesting. Matt, you were down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. It's probably your second favorite place to be outside of being in Southwest Missouri, and the NFL Combine too. So third, maybe. Yeah. But you were down there. You're seeing it with your eyes. You're talking to people. Who are the guys that you walked away from the Senior Bowl with that had the biggest impression on you?
Walter Nolan was one of them. And I'd seen him in person a couple times, but man, it's just that first step quickness is something. And he has a motor that runs red hot. So I'm really excited about him. I think he could be a top 15 pick. Gray Zabel, the interior lineman from North Dakota State, he has played tackle in North Dakota State. Now he's playing guard, center. He had a fantastic week. Arguably made more money for himself than anyone, because going from that lower level of competition, showing that he could do it against SEC, ACC, Big Ten defensive tackles was huge for him that week. And I really like Trey Amos, the corner from Ole Miss. I think there were some speed questions. He answered those throughout the week, showing his ability to be sticky down the field. But George, this is one of the better Senior Bowl groups I've ever seen. Like, we could spend an hour talking about this group, because there might be 8 to 10 first round picks. And I just felt like seems like there were like 20 guys who were like, oh my gosh, they had a great week. Like Elijah Arroyo from Miami, the tight end, had a great week. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, 2 wide receivers from Iowa State, great weeks. It just felt like at every position group, there were guys who were just popping. And so it was Jim Nagy does a hell of a job. That was my 15th Senior Bowl. I think this was top to bottom the best roster I've ever seen down in Mobile.
Wow. George, go ahead, ask a follow-up, because I heard him name every name you've been telling me for months. Matt, let me just give you a little behind the curtain here, Matt, okay? George, I call him GM George affectionately. I love him, but he's talking to me about all these kids, and I'm just like, bro, just give me the big name guys. I'll tell you right now, Matt Miller, I would love, when you said the Patriots could trade back, stay within the top 10, acquire more picks out of that 4th spot, my mind went to Ashton Genty, because I've watched this guy terrorize everyone in college football. George's mind goes to some dude in Boise State I've never heard of. So go ahead, George. I know you want to ask a follow-up, because all the dudes you love, he just named. Go ahead.
Well, hold on. I do want to ask about Jaden Higgins, because I love him. But Matt, you said oof when he said Ashton Genty. What do you make of? Where's your favorite landing spot for Genty? But also, what do you make of hearing Patriots trade back and take Genty top 10?
Yeah,
I love it, because I think this year proved in the NFL that when you have a good quarterback, a great running back helps, right? Like Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, all these guys go to places with established quarterbacks, and they had career years. So I love Ashton Genty. At 4, it would be way too rich, right? You have too many holes on the offensive line, unless you're going to but again, you got $126 million. So we could talk ourselves into this before free agency, right? Of doing that. My favorite landing spot for him is tough, because it's always positional value. I think Dallas would be a tremendous landing spot for him. They've got some horses on the offensive line. They've got Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. So I know they have other needs. They need a wide receiver too. They need a tight end. They got to figure out some things on defense. But it almost just feels like Jerry Jones is going to course correct a year after not signing anyone in free agency and saying, we'll run it back with Zeke. They found something with Rico Dowdle, who's also a free agent this year. It feels like they will correct things and say, if he's on the board at they pick 12, if he's on the board at 12, we'll just draft Ashton Genty and we'll roll with that. And now Dak's got kind of that running mate that he needs in the backfield.
Thank you, Matt Miller. Hey, you owe me an apology, George. Thank you, Matt Miller.
I still think you're insane, Trav, but seeing Matt going, I love it. I understand it. I understand it. Now, what I do want to ask about the guys from the Senior Bowls, you mentioned Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel. I love Higgins, his build, his frame, his versatility, his route running, all of that. Who else out there jumped out at you that you left and you were like, those guys, it could be one, it could be multiple. Who are the wide receivers you left going, those will be impact playmakers in the NFL and very well could go round 2 or 3?
It's both those guys. So both the Iowa State guys, I think, have a shot to go round 2 now. Higgins definitely does. Noel will be in that fringe group. Jalen Royals from Utah State, another guy who has that almost running back build at wide receiver, like thick thighs, big calves, very strong lower body, runs through traffic really, really well, can be a little bit of a gadget guy where you can get him the ball in some end rounds, drag routes. You just want to scheme him some touches. So he had a great week. Xavier Restrepo from Miami, probably goes round 3. But if there was an award for just toughest wide receiver in every NFL draft class, he would win this year's award because he does all the dirty work you need. Incredibly productive, great hands. He's gritty. Patriots fans I know you're thinking like, okay, that just sounded like Wes Welker, or that sounds like, every guy that we've had come through here. And Restrepo is that. He does the dirty work for you underneath, but he has that juice to make things happen after the catch too.
Matt, I want to
sounds
ask
like a Julian Edelman as well.
Yeah, right. Run it down the list. Amendola, like you've had them all.
Matt, I want to ask you about Donovan Ezeraku because George and I interviewed him on this show and loved him. And we left that interview being like, man, with the production this kid's had at BC, the interview, obviously the interview process with teams is much deeper than anything George and I would ask. But I mean, he was handling our questions, no problem. He was smooth. I was like, this kid is special. So George and I have been on a personal crusade to get this kid to not leave town, get the Patriots to draft him. What did you see at the Senior Bowl with him? What are you hearing? Like, do you feel like this kid, I know he was doing work there. Is his stock gone up because of his performance at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, absolutely. And he and Mike Green both, two edge rushers where you went down there and you're like, is the speed to power going to be there when they are going against the best of the best? For Ezeraku, yes, it absolutely was. I mean, same for Mike Green. But I think you see the length and the speed on tape, and he did a great job playing out wide. But then you wonder, okay, well, when he has to work a bull rush or when, an offensive lineman has a jump set and can catch his speed, what happens? Well, he showed what happens, and it's that he can double down and he can run straight through your chest. The bad news for you guys is I don't think there's any way he's going to be there at the top of round 2 for you. I don't know how Jeff Hafley lets him get by him at 24, given the relationship they have, given the needs of the Green Bay Packers. If he's there at 24, that just feels like a match made in heaven for someone who already knows your defense. You know the type of character you're getting. He's a culture builder. So, yeah, he's one of my favorite players of the Senior Bowl. And he was one of my favorite guys headed into it as well. There's a strong Boston College group at ESPN, so they're always in your ear about, you watching my BC guys, and Ezeraku made it very, very easy to watch and get excited about what he can do.
Hey, we spoke to him about 15, 20 minutes. When he hopped off, Trav and I went like, that is a professional. Yeah, he's in college, but he'd be a professional. I love your pro comps, Matt. What pro comp do you give a Donovan Ezeraku?
So I'm still working on his, but the initial one was Alex Highsmith from the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I do think he would be best suited in a 3-4. Like, let him play a little bit in space. A lot of those comps, George, as you know, they come from like the athletic testing. So I'll have one on film, and then I'll take like, okay, this is what I thought on film, and then I'll get the athletic testing numbers from the combine, and you can kind of hone in a little bit more on those comps. But I do think that playing in space, 3-4 outside linebacker, at least early in his career, is where he'd be best.
Hey, George,
hey, man,
great news. That'd be great news if he goes to Green Bay, because one thing about the Packers, I'll give them credit for, they develop their players. Their player development is really good with the Packers. So that'll be a great fit for him. I'll leave you with this, Matt. Last one for me. Everyone always asks for one sleeper in the draft, one guy that you feel confident, late round. You're like, wherever this kid lands, you watch out. Who's your guy?
There's so many when you have my job, right? Like that's my job, is to know all these guys. Picking one, I'll say Jack Kaiser, linebacker from Notre Dame. And I like Notre Dame and sleeper don't always go hand in hand. He's going to be a mid-day 3 pick. He's going to be a starter in the NFL, guarantee. And that's the kind of guy you want on your football team.
Okay.
Hey, that's a guy the Patriots could be interested in. They need to fill holes on multiple levels and get ready for veterans leaving. He's Matt Miller. Matt, we can talk NFL draft with you for like another 45 minutes, but a lot's going to change in a week. Enjoy the NFL Combine. Appreciate you taking the time to come on Foxboro Rush, man.
You bet, guys. Thanks so much.
That was Matt Miller of ESPN. Catch him covering the NFL draft. Now, if you're enjoying this conversation, make sure to catch plenty more on Foxboro Rush. New episodes dropping every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, wherever you get your podcasts. That's Foxboro Rush.